Hang on.
Okay, they're shooting.
Hang on.
Okay, down. Okay, we're here.
Go ahead and shoot me.
Damn! Trying to.
Why do you think an FBI HRT agent would fire his rifle twice at what we can probably call a perceived threat and then deny he ever fired at all? I have a few ideas on why I think that might be, which I'll speculate at the end of this video, but make sure you tell me your thoughts in the comments. In my research, I found some interesting, insightful, and at times funny court findings, which includes the FBI's response to questions and their recollection of events. I would also be careful holding the belief that organizations of any kind whose actions are shrouded in secrecy are automatically perfect, because secrecy means you don't really know. I'm keenly aware of team guys all over the place that have an advanced skill set and they put in a lot of hard work, but I'm also aware of shortcomings and downright failures. I also know that when failures occur, it's typically followed by a lie or a cover-up, because admitting to failure in their eyes degrades the image they've built for themselves. I've seen this happen not only on the team level, but more often on the individual level, where an operator will make a mistake and not own it, or take credit for something they actually didn't do. Does that sound familiar to you? If you've ever been part of any tactical team, I know you've experienced this. But HRT would never screw something up, right? Like shoot a suspect with his hands up, deny ever firing at all, and then subsequently deny searching for or picking up casings after the shooting when aerial surveillance post-shooting shows the FBI HRT moving around the scene in the dark, looking under and around vehicles and appearing to pick up objects. Even a fifth grader knows that sounds like tampering with evidence. Look, don't canoe the messenger, okay? Those are the DOJ's words, not mine. I've been accused of tarnishing the FBI's tactical reputation, even receiving an email after the last video I made asking me to take it down for someone who creatively named their email Burner. Something tells me that if that was the FBI, they wouldn't be using a Gmail account. I'm not responsible for your reputation. You are. The only thing I'm doing is telling you guys true stories about things that happened and giving you the facts with some of my opinion. The FBI hostage rescue team was involved in a controversial incident during the 2016 occupation of a national wildlife refugee in Oregon, a 41-day standoff led by anti-government activists. Controversial because an FBI HRT agent was charged with lying to federal supervisors, denying that he fired 2 shots at the suspect who had his hands up. The activists occupied the refugee near Burns, Oregon to protest federal control of public lands and imprisonment of 2 local ranchers for arson. Side note, Trump later pardoned those 2 ranchers. For weeks, the FBI and Oregon State Police monitored the situation, and it became obvious that the FBI opted for a restrained approach to avoid repeating the bloody outcomes of the past like Ruby Ridge. What might compel someone surrounded by other people to even believe it's possible to fire your rifle twice without anyone noticing, say you didn't fire your gun, and then search the scene and probably collect shell casings which were never recovered? My intuition tells me someone might believe that's possible because previous experiences, past behavior, and a culture that allows it to persist. But that's just my opinion. The turning point in the occupation came on January 26, 2016, when the FBI and the Oregon State Police acted on an opportunity to arrest key leaders as they traveled in their vehicles. Law enforcement set up a traffic stop and a roadblock on Highway 395, a remote stretch ideal for minimizing public risk. The operation involved both OSP troopers and FBI agents, including members of the HRT. During the traffic stop portion, the Jeep surrendered peacefully, but a white Dodge truck with activists fled after a brief pause, speeding towards a second roadblock about a mile away. As the Dodge truck approaches the roadblock, OSP troopers engage the truck with 3 rounds as the truck veers off the road and nearly hits an FBI agent. As Finicum, the driver, exits the vehicle, he initially raises his hands as 2 rounds are fired from the right side of Finicum's truck. 1 round misses, and the other round enters the roof and fragments inside the truck, striking one of the activists in the back seat. These are the 2 rounds fired that are called into question. Finicum then moves into the open and reaches towards his jacket pocket, where a loaded 9mm gun was later found. OSP troopers shot and killed him, firing 3 rounds, the officials deeming the shooting justified. Deschutes County Sheriff's Office investigators tasked with reviewing the shooting determined that an FBI HRT agent fired 2 shots at the truck after it veered into the snow, one hitting the roof and the other missing.
No, mobile network not available.
Do you have numbers for people here in town?
Yeah, but hang on.
Okay, they're shooting.
Hang on.
Okay, down. Okay, we're here.
This animation here is showing the impact of the rounds fired by the OSP troopers as Finicum's truck approaches the roadblock.
Go ahead and shoot me.
As I fade this overlay in and out, you get a good idea of the positions of where people were. You can see the purple guy exiting the vehicle. That's obviously the suspect. The individual in red at the street and the snow where they meet is the FBI agent that was almost hit, and the person in blue is the person who fired those rounds into the truck or at the truck.
Damn! Trying to. Stay down, stay down, stay down, stay down, stay down. Damn it, are they shooting him? Did they shoot him? Oh my God! Hold still. Stay down.
Is
Is he dead? Don't get out.
I'm EMT! I'm EMT!
Stop it.
Are you hit?
No, I'm EMT!
No, hold on, don't do anything. Hey, they're shooting. Don't do anything. The door is shut. Where the hell is Lavoy? Is he on the... Are they shooting?
I can't see.
Shut up. Stay down, Ryan.
Oh, God!
Ryan, stay down. Stay down. Oh!
I think they just
Keep down.
killed the boy.
Did they kill him?
I think they did, and they're shooting over here on this door.
Oh, I got hit too.
Okay, hold.
Unless there was body cams, which I couldn't find any reference of anybody wearing, they likely only knew that these rounds were fired at that moment because one of the females in the backseat was recording on her cell phone. None of the HRT members initially reported discharging their weapons. This led to allegations of a cover-up. In 2017, HRT Agent Astarita was indicted for lying to investigators about firing his rifle and obstructing justice. Prosecutors argued he concealed the shots to protect his position on the elite team. While I'm here, I'm just going to explain exactly what the charges were. He was charged with knowingly making false statements to supervisors, some of which were team leader positions, that he did not shoot, knowing it would be material to the FBI's decision to call out a shooting incident response team to investigate. He was charged 3 or 4 times with that, and one of those charges was quickly dropped. Then he was also charged with knowingly engaging in misleading conduct toward another person, officers of the Oregon State Police, by failing to disclose that he had fired 2 rounds during the arrest. Astarita maintained his innocence in 2018, and a jury acquitted him, finding insufficient evidence to prove that he lied. Just to gloss over the factors that led to the acquittal, it was primarily due to there being no witness and no shell casings recovered from around where Astarita was alleged to have fired from. Only 2 casings were recovered with a metal detector buried in the snow, and if I had to guess, they were only there because whoever collected the evidence couldn't find them. Because there were no witnesses and no physical evidence, the case basically hinged on proving that Astarita was standing in the only position possible to have impacted that vehicle with that round. The video evidence isn't clear enough to identify anyone. No one owned up to it. No one saw who it was. And some of those agents couldn't recall where they were standing, including Astarita. You may have heard of sayings like no face, no case, or it's not about what you know, it's about what you can prove. And that seemed to be the case here. The broader operation reflected a calculated FBI strategy to avoid a bloody siege. It worked, but not without lingering questions about HRT's actions that day. Some of what I'm about to read you is from articles, and some of it is from the court transcripts themselves. An assistant U.S. attorney, Gary Sussman, told jurors in his opening statement, "The case is not about whether Astarita was right or wrong to fire. It's about integrity, without which a law enforcement officer is nothing and has nothing," he said. "If you shoot, you own your shots." And so just to clarify that that is what this is about, not whether or not the rounds were justified, but essentially honesty and lying about your actions. Sussman portrayed Astarita as a relatively inexperienced member of an elite FBI unit and the only member of law enforcement who was in a position to fire those shots in question. Only one guy stood in just the right spot. Only one guy stood with his rifle shouldered aimed at Robert Lavoy Finicum's truck. I do want to point out that I could see the excuse being made that he is the newest member on the team, and I've read that also somewhere else. I can tell you that, especially for FBI HRT and the process that it takes to get there and the qualifications to be there, you would, one, not be there if they didn't think that you were qualified to do the job and capable of doing the job, and you most definitely would not be put in a position to be the guy on the gun if they didn't think you were capable. Olson is going to be an OSP trooper. Bundy told him, "When you guys were shooting, I think I was hit in the shoulder," Olson recalled. Olson cut through Bundy's button-up Western shirt, his sweatshirt and cotton shirt, and found what looked like an entry bullet wound, he said. While Bundy was on his knees on the east side of the road, handcuffed, Astarita walked over and looked as if he was going to examine Bundy's right shoulder. A dashcam video from a state police car caught that moment, which was played for jurors. Astarita also knocked off Bundy's cowboy hat. Astarita smacked his hat off his head, Olson testified, adding that there was no reason for him to have done so. Now, he could have been walking over there just to look because he was curious. That is a normal thing. But also, it kind of plays into the idea that he's kind of realizing, hey, I did something maybe I shouldn't have done, or maybe I feel like I messed up. Let me go over there and see how injured this person is, because that could play into a personal mindset of, oh man, I really screwed up, or okay, it's not that bad. It's not a bad injury, and maybe therefore the situation isn't as bad as it seems. Olson reported also seeing an unusual, nice, neat pile of less lethal 40mm rounds beside a white state police truck parked in the middle of the roadblock. The pile was near 2 to 3 brass-colored rifle casings he noticed as officers tried to arrest others in Finicum's truck. The 40mm was used on the windows of the vehicle as they were trying to get the individuals inside the truck, or compel the individuals inside the truck to surrender. It was determined that the round that was fired at the truck by allegedly the FBI agent ricocheted inside the vehicle, causing that shrapnel wound from the round itself inside the suspect's arm or his shoulder. That wound was described as a minor shrapnel wound, and he received treatment at a hospital afterwards. Becker said he was standing near Astarita at the scene, and Astarita was unusually amped up, moving around a lot and barking commands. His reaction was in marked contrast to other officers at the scene who were calm and collected, Beckert said. Olson, the state police SWAT officer, also said Astarita's behavior stood out after the shooting. He seemed a little overboard with his emotions, almost seemed like a rookie to me, said Olson, with the state police for more than 10 years and 5 years with the SWAT team. Being involved in a shooting does and can elevate the way that you respond to a shooting, both emotionally and physically. This could be another factor indicating that because his behavior was in stark contrast to the other operators' behavior, them being calm and him being amped up, could that be another factor indicating that he was just involved in an engagement? While at the roadblock, Scott said he spotted 2 spent rifle casings near the front of the FBI truck that formed the part of a V in the northbound lane of US 395. Timothy Swanson, chief of the FBI's hostage rescue team's blue unit that Astarita was on, was monitoring the stop and arrest of the leaders via a live video feed from the FBI aerial plane while in Boise, Idaho. A day and a half later, once in Burns, he learned there was an unaccounted for bullet strike to Finicum's truck and an inference or insinuation that rifle brass casings had been picked up from the scene. Swanson never asked agents if they had picked up any shell casings from the scene. I couldn't even fathom someone would pick up brass casings at a shooting I believe was legally justified, Swanson said. An FBI medic said Astarita asked him at the roadblock after Finicum was killed, "Have you seen anything on the ground?" Astarita didn't specify, and the medic didn't ask, and he said he didn't think the question was odd. An FBI supervisor, Agent Ian McConnell, after the shooting, asked the sharpshooters if they were okay and if anybody had fired their guns. All nodded their heads that they were fine, except for Astarita. "Hey bro, I'm good. You don't have to ask me that." Another hostage rescue team agent said he was present during McConnell's exchange with Astarita and recounted it a bit differently. Scott said he heard McConnell ask Astarita if any of our guys had shot. He said, "No bro, you can't ask me that right now," Scott recalled. McConnell asked Astarita once again, saying he just had to know if any of their agents had shot, Scott said. "You know you can't ask me that right now," Astarita responded, according to Scott. That's when Scott interjected, "Yes, I can ask you that question," he told Astarita. "There's admin things that have to happen to document a shooting." Astarita then said, according to Scott, "No, we're good." When Astarita says, "You can't ask me that right now," twice, I get the idea that he feels like he doesn't have to answer that question because if he did something wrong, then he's incriminating himself, which is kind of an absurd thing to think of, that somebody would think that that's how this process works. If you're involved in a shooting and you were the only one there, or it doesn't even matter if other people are around, they need to know, did you shoot? Because there's certain administrative things that have to happen. You may need to be removed from the scene. Your gun may need to be taken from you. And more importantly, we need to know where you were standing, which direction you were firing, where the suspect was, which direction he was firing, so that we can look around the scene to see if there is any particularly, innocent people or buildings or apartments or cars that may have been impacted by rounds, because we obviously want to get to people and help them if that is the case. In this situation, obviously their suspect in the vehicle is contained there right in front of them, so it's not, that portion isn't necessarily a big deal. But I was on a shooting recently, and we had to do this very thing, and the officer had to tell us where he was standing, where the suspect was, which direction they were shooting, and we did find rounds in an apartment where there was a child and a family present in the window above where the officer was standing in the direction the suspect was firing. And so that's why that information is important. Swanson said he met with all of the agents individually and asked them if they fired. Astarita and other agents all said no. He also addressed them as a group, telling them that he needed to know whether or not any of them fired, that from his military experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan, it's possible people don't know if they pulled the trigger, and that he believed all the shots that day were legally justified. All said they hadn't fired. At that point, I had no reason to believe any of them were lying to me. I don't necessarily believe that you could fire your gun and not recall that you fired at all, but I do believe and understand that you may not remember how many rounds you fired, especially if we're talking about somebody operating at such a high level like FBI HRT. To fire your gun and not know that you fired your gun, I think would indicate a bigger problem. This is a statement from Astarita's defense attorney, which I think is just kind of funny. FBI Special Agent Astarita is one of the FBI's best shooters, and he knows when to shoot and when not to shoot. Standing within easy striking distance of a militia leader who had come close to killing his fellow agent, Astarita decided to hold fire, the attorney said. If he had shot, he would not have missed. I find it extremely unlikely that the FBI HRT is batting 100%. There's always things that make marksmanship difficult. We've talked about that many times. And the fact that you're trying to shoot through a vehicle in and of itself leads to the likelihood that you may not hit what you're actually aiming at. This is probably the worst part of this entire story. Defense attorney David Angeli had emphasized a different version of events, one of which Oregon State Police SWAT Officer number 1 was the liar and not Astarita. The FBI released a memo because of this incident regarding their post-shooting procedures and evidence. The FBI director regarding a potential conflict between the FBI post-shooting evidence handling and crime scene maintenance procedure and the FBI hostage rescue team practice of identifying and removing sensitive items such as night vision goggles, weapons, or unexploded flashbang grenades from a scene. The DOJ identified these concerns in connection with the FBI's role in the law enforcement shooting that occurred following the armed militia seizure of the wildlife refugee near Burns, Oregon. At the scene, all of the FBI HRT operators denied having fired a shot. As a result, state and local law enforcement personnel, not the FBI, assumed control of the scene and conducted the shooting investigation, which subsequently determined that the shooting by OSP officers was justified. During the shooting investigation, state and local law enforcement investigators became aware of FBI surveillance video taken at the scene shortly after the shooting. That video depicted FBI HRT personnel moving around the scene in the dark, using flashlights to look under and around vehicles, examining the area near the roadblock, and appearing to pick up objects from the roadway. The FBI HRT agents denied searching for or picking up ammunition casings and instead told OSP detectives that, consistent with FBI HRT practice, they were conducting a sensitive items check. The actions of FBI HRT personnel became an issue when state and local law enforcement investigators subsequently determined that 8 shots were fired on January 26, 2 more than the 6 shots that could be attributed to the OSP officers. Further, investigators only found 2 shell casings at the scene, with both being discovered off the roadway in the snow using metal detectors. None of the casings from the 6 shots that were taken while law enforcement was standing in the roadway were recovered. The Inspector General identified areas in which the HRT's practice of identifying and removing sensitive items following a shooting either are not squarely addressed by or potentially conflict with the FBI's procedures for evidence handling, crime scene management, and agent-involved shooting incident investigations. The FBI's evidence handling and crime scene management procedures prohibit the removal of items from a shooting scene and require any item seized to be documented. However, by their terms, these procedures only contemplate an FBI-led investigation of the shooting and do not explicitly apply where the FBI coordinates with state and local law enforcement outside of an FBI-led task force and where state and local law enforcement takes control of the scene and conducts the shooting investigation, nor do FBI procedures provide guidance concerning whether or how the FBI agents may identify and remove sensitive items from a crime scene. Basically, what that's saying is at the time, FBI HRT's policy is that if it's an FBI shooting, you don't touch any evidence, you leave it all in place, of course, for sensitive items like unexploded ordnance. But if it's an investigation led by another agency, essentially they're allowed to go around the crime scene and do whatever they want. And also it said that there was no policy in place for how the agents would identify or remove sensitive items from a crime scene, like who picked the item up, what the item was, and where it was picked up from. I'm willing to bet the Oregon State Police don't like the FBI HRT all that much. Now, if I had to speculate on a couple different theories on why an FBI agent would shoot at a vehicle and then say he didn't shoot, maybe it's because as the suspect was getting out of the vehicle, he fired those 2 rounds, then realized the suspect had his hands up. Maybe he kind of thought, oh man, I screwed up. I don't want to say anything. Maybe he fired those 2 rounds and didn't realize there was other people in the car, and then noticed there was other people in the car and thought, oh, maybe I just shot somebody I shouldn't have shot, so he didn't want to say anything. And maybe the least likely reason is because of an ego. Maybe he fired and realized he missed and didn't want to be responsible being on FBI HRT and missing. I think that's probably the least likely reason. But let me know what your theory is in the comment section. If you're not subscribed already, you can do that by tapping on this photo. And before you go, don't forget to feed the algorithm down below.